Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it is a great pleasure and honor to welcome every one of you to the 2024 ceremony for the Olof Palme Prize. A special welcome, of course, to this year's award recipients, Bellingcat, represented by its founder and creative director, Elliot Higgins, together with Charlotte Meyer, social media editor. We are glad and very satisfied for having chosen Bellingcat to receive this year's prize. You are so important in a complex media landscape that needs all the attention we can provide so that it can truly be a part of developing democracy, not undermining and weakening it. A warm welcome to both of you. Dear friends, humanity have accumulated more knowledge than ever before. But as individuals and groups, we tend to more and more limit our use of all this knowledge to confirming and reinforcing only our own opinion. We travel and communicate as never before, and at the same time, we increasingly stay in our own safe bubble of like-minded. We have tremendous opportunities to get to know other people, to understand the reality and conditions of their daily lives, and yet so many choose to misunderstand, misinterpret, and belittle others. We have increasingly more possibilities for greater human contact, but too often these possibilities are used to hate and to threaten our fellow human beings. In 20 years, the number of internet users has increased from just over 1 billion to around 5 billion. And the trend shows no signs of stopping, although we need to be aware that the uneven access to internet between different parts of the world is currently deepening global division, a serious problem. But with increased internet use in general, information has become easier to access and disseminate for so many people. At the same time, propaganda and disinformation have taken on new forms with anonymous social media accounts, fake news articles, and misleading videos. And let me give you a few examples of the spread. In only 5 years, the global use of information on mobile phones have increased sixfold. In the United States, most teens use YouTube and TikTok every day, according to Pew Research Institute. In the annual report, Swedes and the Internet, it is stated that social media is the most important news source for young people. Most people take part in the news directly in the digital feed. Few click through to a news page. Furthermore, the report states that Facebook is a social media service on which most Swedes consume society news. However, this does not apply to those born in the 2000s who mainly take part of society news on TikTok. More than 1 in 4 born in the 2000s and up to half of girls and women born in the same period use TikTok as a news source. Elon Musk's controversial control of Twitter, now X, shows how sensitive a global information channel is to the whims of its owners. Rather than media ethics and publisher systems, the rules written by the channel's owner apply. TikTok, which is largely owned by Chinese ByteDance, has grown exponentially among young people, and the content is fed to consumers using high-quality algorithms. The viewer doesn't need to do searches or subscribe to profiles of their choices. It's enough to scroll and press like for the content to be tailored in a direction that suits the viewer expressed interest or that benefits TikTok's interest. The corporate governance of the various technology companies has huge impact on what information reaches consumers. That is one of the reasons why actors like Bellingcat is so important. Now, of course, social media can play, and in large extent do play, an important and positive role in our societies. It offers so many more possibilities of human contact. The questions are how we as individuals use it, if all of us can trust what is labeled as facts, if it is connected to some kind of regulatory framework, including responsibility, and the key question is if it serves our democracy. Dear friends, one component that has made the subject even more complex is artificial intelligence, or AI. Again, a technology with so much positive potential, but at the same time, far from without serious risks. In 2023, AI became far better, more accessible than ever before. And together with the widespread use of internet, this will have major consequences for information flows around the world. Some consequences are unpredictable. Others have already begun to make their mark. One example is deepfakes, AI-generated images which have been widely disseminated. In World Economic Forum's Global Risk Report 2024, some 1,500 experts from academia, business, and politics states that in the long term they see extreme weather, decreased biodiversity, and weapons of mass destruction as some of the biggest risks. But in a shorter time horizon, disinformation is ranked as the greatest global risk. Undermined political processes and increased polarization are two of the consequences that follows. It is indeed true that false information spread by humans and bots have been doing damage to the internet for a long time. But with artificial intelligence, it can have an avalanche of growth. Accounts can be mass-produced and at the same time tailored to convey the messages in a credible and human-like way. Audio and video will be possible to generate in a way that greatly reduces the credibility on these forms of information. In text and speech, it has always been possible to produce and spread lies. Now that applies to virtually all digital media. People in general have been able to trust with relatively good self-confidence that something has actually happened if there were audio or video clips that depict that event. That is no longer possible. So new demands are now being placed on the choice of credible sources and source criticism. Like a rumor spread by word or mouth or text published by unreliable sources, audio and video will now be unreliable until the content is verified by experts. Now, the issue of reliable media is, of course, not isolated to social media. Other sources also need to be scrutinized. So, important authorities such as public service broadcasters, news outlets, and organizations like Bellingcat are taking on an increasingly important role in verifying information. And power is, of course, not least abused by authoritarian states. They can choose what they want to verify in the state media or in court. So regulation and labeling of AI-generated content will be needed. Dear friends, in today's world, democracy is challenged in so many ways. Political extremism is gaining ground and autocracy is on the march. One important part of autocracy's path forward is attacking media, primarily independent journalism. Last year, I engaged in the board of IFPIM, that is International Fund for Public Interest Media. I chose to do so because independent media is so crucial for the protection of our democracy. And today, only 13% of the world's population enjoys access to free media. And democracy needs, as a foundation, a common picture of facts, or what we can state as undisputable, what is true, or what is false. The smaller that surface becomes, the less likely that we can meet in a democratic process with a common starting point of the discussion. We know that high-tech media enterprises and its owners that can produce their own truth, they will do so, not serving democracy and the people, but serving themselves. And we risk drifting apart as human beings, as regions, as countries, as a world, more divided and also more exposed to conflicts. That is damaging for democracy. On the other hand, the larger that common picture is, the better possibilities for people to use all these available knowledge as sources of inspiration, growing as individuals, and exchange views on an equal basis on how we want to develop our society. That's a path towards a stronger democracy. So with this year's prize, the Olof Palme Fund is highlighting the work of Bellingcat. Your tireless efforts are so important for all people who is standing up for democracy, fighting for democracy, and we thank you for this. Now, the chairman of the board, Joachim Palme, will conduct the award ceremony. Please, Joachim.
Thank you, Stefan, for setting the stage for this year's seminar so thoughtfully. Representing the Olof Palme family, it is my honor and privilege to hand over this year's Olof Palme Prize to Bellingcat. And as you heard, it will be represented by its founder, Elliot Higgins. But before I do that, I will read the board's motivation. And here you will have to bear with me that it's a bit long and complicated, but it is our attempt to do justice to the various contributions of Bellingcat, our attempt to spell out why we think Bellingcat deserves the prize. So the 2024 Olof Palme Prize goes to the independent investigative journalist group Bellingcat. In an era when the transmission of news and facts threatens to be eroded by an ever-increasing flood of disinformation from various malign actors, including nation-states, Bellingcat provides a necessary and welcome scrutiny of these information flow, based on what is available from open source materials. In addition, Bellingcat conducts veritable detective work to document the perpetrators of various crimes, be it murder, attempted murder, trafficking, or terrorist acts. Their tireless work contributes to, in line with the political legacy of Olof Palme, establishing a more solid ground for nation states and international organizations to act on the basis of international as well as national law. Moreover, the vast documentation that Bellingcat has mobilized provides an evidentiary foundation for writing the history of a series of crimes against humanity. Another way to motivate the choice of this year's prize is to start from the life and work of Olof Palme. At the age of 17, he started to work as a journalist, Svenska Dagbladet, one of the two big morning papers in Stockholm. He had a sharp pen already then, and my impression is that the time as journalist really nurtured his passion for writing and for journalism. At the university, he studied law and developed a passion for international law, not least. As a student leader, he traveled the world and became a passionate opponent to Stalinism and colonialism. He engaged himself in politics to support and defend people's rights to freedom and to social justice. He took a reformist perspective and saw policymaking as a rational, enlightened process. But then you need to get the facts right. And this is why I allow myself to claim that he would have been very, very happy about Bellingcat's work. And this is why I am so happy to be able to invite onto the stage to receive the 2024 Olof Palme Prize, Elliot Higgins.
Thank you so much for this honor. It means a great deal to Bellingcat and myself that we've received this in what is our 10th year of existence. In 2014, in July, Bellingcat was created. It was something that was an extension of work that I had been doing as a blogger. And I don't want to make that sound bigger than it is. It wasn't a really amazing blog, but it was something I enjoyed doing, and I'd built a following, and really, it was an extension of my own experience of being an internet user from, quite the early days. 1995 was when I started using the internet, using things like CompuServe and things that some people in this audience have probably never heard of in this modern era of internet use. But I was always fascinated by technology, and I think I'm very fortunate to see so many develops in that world of technology. I remember getting my first computer when I was 5 years old, a Spectrum 48K, a very simple system compared to what we have now, but that was a fascination that kept with me for my whole life. And when the internet appeared, it was a very exciting moment in my life. I found it absolutely fascinating and exciting, but I've seen it develop over the years, and I've seen it develop in ways that are both exciting and extremely concerning, as you all have. I was very much part of the early online cultures that emerged on the internet. I spent far too much time on the internet, it's fair to say, but it gave me an understanding of how communities worked and how they communicated prior to the social media era that really emerged after the launch of the iPhone and the creation of more social media platforms that took advantage of this device in our pockets that we carry everywhere. And that was really where it started for me. Before this work, I was working in kind of administration jobs, nothing really too exciting, but I did have a fascination with global politics, internet culture, and arguing with people on the internet, which I was very obsessed with, it was fair to say. So on these internet forums and these comment sections in 2011, one of the big topics of discussion was the conflict in Libya. And it was the start of the Arab Spring, and this was really the first conflict where social media started to play a major role in our understanding of the conflict, because people on the ground were taking videos and photographs and sharing them with the world. But I discovered the world wasn't really listening, that journalists who could make use of this information weren't interested, with good reason. They had used claims from various bloggers and websites in some of their own reporting that turned out to be false. One very well-known example at the time was a blog called Gay Girl in Damascus, which turned out to be a white guy in America. So this had a really big impact on the trust of social media among journalists, but I found it very frustrating because the people who were using this information, these videos and photographs being shared online from these conflict zones, were often conspiracy theorists who used it to fuel their own opinions and share it with other conspiracy theorists. Whilst I could see there was useful information in here, but the question I had was, how do you make this useful information that people actually want to use? And this is where the first germs of ideas around geolocation and all these ideas that we use now in Bellingcat's work really started. So I started using that to win arguments in internet comment sections, but that eventually evolved into a blog, which I ran for 2 years. And through that time, I basically set myself a task of every day writing something. And a lot of it was looking at what was happening in Syria at the time. And through that 2-year period from 2012 to 2014, I saw the rise, first of all, of communities online that were focused on trying to figure out what this stuff meant. What were these videos? What were these weapons? Especially around the use of chemical weapon use. But in parallel to that, we saw the other communities form, the communities who said these attacks aren't happening, that you can't trust what the West is saying because they've lied to us before over Iraq in 2003. And that always interested me a great deal, that kind of the way those communities think. And in 2014, I launched Bellingcat on July 14th, 2014. 3 days later, MH17 was shot down over eastern Ukraine. And that really became a huge moment for Bellingcat and the whole open source community. Because what we saw happening in that moment was not just Bellingcat coming together as a website, but a community emerged around an incident. And that community was digging through photographs, pictures, shared from the conflict zone in Ukraine. And that was really my first experience with how that community-led approach to investigation could really benefit the understanding of what's happening, especially in an unfolding event like what happened with MH17 and the conflicts in Ukraine at the time. Very early on, there was basically just me and a few volunteers working on this, but soon we had been interviewed by the police about our work on MH17, which was quite nerve-wracking, but also made me realize that people do actually care about this beyond just people arguing on the internet, and there's value to continue doing this work. So over the years, I grew and developed Bellingcat from an organization I kickstarted with crowdfunding of about £60,000 to where we are now. We're an NGO in the Netherlands. We have 40 staff members, and we're working on a huge range of topics. But throughout that, I've seen some really concerning trends develop and patterns repeating time and time again. Really from 2016 onwards, there's been this obsession, I would say, among some communities with the idea of disinformation and where it comes from. And the answer always being it's from these outside forces, it's Russia. Like we look at 2016 and the election of Donald Trump, and he was elected because Russia was doing disinformation. This is not really the case. It's because Fox News and Rupert Murdoch exist, not because Vladimir Putin and Aviafan and conspiracy websites exist. And I started thinking about what are the root causes of this. Why do people get drawn into these communities that believe in conspiracy theories? We've seen this with chemical weapon use in Syria. We've seen this around the downing of Malaysian Airlines flight MH17. We've seen this around COVID. We've seen this around the Earth being flat. What is the commonalities between all these communities? And that kind of really became what I was interested in, because these are the communities that create and spread disinformation. It is very rarely actually outside forces who do this. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they take advantage of it. But really it's social communities who are doing this. And I realized there was a commonality between that over the years there's been a development of a deep distrust in traditional sources of authority, the media, the government, and often with really good reason. The invasion of Iraq in 2003 is often a touchstone moment for many people. And that's really a failure of politics, of the media, that have created this environment. And that's why it's a lot easier to blame outside actors for this problem, rather than actually looking inwards and saying, what has our society done to ourselves? Because social media and the internet is something that is now amplifying those issues. So studying this, I've been looking at kind of the motivating factors for a lot of people who get drawn into these communities. And what you're really seeing are people who don't trust what's being printed in the media, So they have lots of opportunities to discover information online. They have a concern and they Google it and they find a community that has the same concerns. And they start reading that and the algorithm comes along, it starts recommending them similar content. And it takes them down a journey that can draw them towards more conspiratorial thinking, especially for those people who in those moments where there have been betrayals by the government and the media, that it creates a lens they see the entire world through. One where they think that you can never trust what the Western media is saying on any topic, therefore the opposite must always be true. And I see this on so many topics. And it's really damaging. And in this kind of modern era of social media, that's something that is constantly being amplified. We also have to think that the way in which information is shared and distributed has changed dramatically. We are no longer living in a society where the majority of people get their news from the newspapers or the TV news. They get it from social media platforms, especially in younger generations. I am constantly appalled talking to policymakers and people in government how they kind of think social media is a silly thing that'll go away and everyone will go back to reading newspapers once they hit their 30s. That is not the case. We are seeing a change in how we consume information on a peer-to-peer basis. And a lot of people find that really worrying. It's different. It seems chaotic. But I see that as an exciting opportunity. There were yearly surveys of what young people in the UK want to do as a career. And many of them are saying they want to be influencers. And typically in the mainstream media, they freak out about that. That's a terrifying idea. They think people just want to post funny videos on TikTok as a career. But what this tells me is people want to communicate with each other. They want to be part of conversations. They want to have influence. And really a lot of what I see as well is this sense of disempowerment among young people, that no longer are the structures that exist around them in government, in the media, reflecting their world, because they're using different kinds of ways to communicate with each other. They want to interact. They want to be part of the conversation. They want to influence that conversation. And until we appreciate that and we address that point, then we're going to keep on seeing the same problems that we're seeing now happen time and time again. I think this is a really exciting opportunity. We need to talk to young people. We need to educate them. We need to equip them with what they need to use these platforms on their terms, not our terms. Not on the terms where we're saying, well, you'll go back to reading the newspapers and watching the TV news eventually. So at Bellingcat, a lot of the work we've been doing over the last few years is working on ideas around education, not just to say, oh, this is what fake news is and how to spot it, because that's fine, but it's really not that exciting for young people. What we want to show them to do is, how do you actually investigate something? If you investigate something, how do you have influence with that? How do you connect to people? How do you reach out and connect to people? We're doing work now with an organization called the Student View in the UK, where we're going into schools, teaching them those skills, teaming them up with local journalists so they can investigate local issues that affect them directly. One thing that I think sometimes when you look at the work of Bellingcat, you kind of see the work we do on MH17, Russian poisonings, all these big stories that are very exciting. But what excites me are the small stories that people can do in their own communities that actually has an impact. One of my favorite stories that I've worked on was something very small scale. It wasn't even something we actually published. We were contacted by an organization called Dog Lost in the UK during the COVID lockdown. And they contacted me saying, we try and find people's lost and stolen dogs, and we need some help. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, I'll have a look. And they sent me a piece of CCTV footage of a car speeding away after stealing a dog. And during COVID, this was there was a plague of this happening because lots of people wanted pets, so people would just steal pets. So we examined the CCTV footage, and it had a blurry number plate. But I recalled that we had used a machine learning process to decipher number plates in a murder that occurred in Ukraine. So we applied that same process to the kidnapping of a dog, and within 24 hours, we had given the number plate to the police. They had gone to the owner of the car's house, found the dog, and returned it to the owner. And that is a small thing, but to me, that's really what I want more people to doing. That's just one. What if we have 10 people doing that, or 100, or 1,000, or 1,000,000? That's what excites me. So this is why I think it's so important to start with the basics. Get into school, educate young people, show them what they can do, empower them to make a difference about things they care about. Don't just say, wait until you're 18, or when you're through university, when you're a journalist, when you're a police officer. Do it now, because I did that. I had a background that was nothing to do with investigation. I taught myself how to do this. And now I'm here in front of you telling you all about it. So my hope is that, this prize will be part of the way that we can start really making this point, because I believe it is absolutely essential for the future of our democracy. Because if we don't do that, we can already see what happens. That young people are drawn towards the worst aspects of the internet, ones that really undermine the fabric of our democracy, that it really comes about arguing with people on the internet forever and ever and ever, and nothing gets fixed, and we all end up just being really angry at each other without actually fixing anything. So I really hope that this is one thing that contributes to this really significant change in attitude, and that we can reach young people and get them involved and empower them. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Elliot, for adding weight and substance to our motivation to the awarding you the prize. Now that you have sort of sung for your supper, it will be time for music, and we're proud to present Swedish world-class artists who've sung previously at the award of the Polar Music Award. Now, this year, she will perform here and sing to us. Please welcome onto the stage wonderful Jenny Abrahamsson.
I have a dream, a song to sing, to help me cope with anything. If you see the wonder of a fairy tale, you can take the future, even if you fail. I believe in angels, something good in everything I see. I believe in angels when I know the time is right for me. I cross the stream. I have a dream. I have a dream, a fantasy, to help me through reality. And my destination makes it worth the while, pushing through the darkness, still another lie. I believe in angels, something good in
Thanks so much, Jenny. You did beautiful, and the good news is that Jenny will soon be back. But before that, we will now have the next part of this prize ceremony, and it's my honor to introduce the moderator of what is now coming, namely a panel discussion. The moderator of that is first and foremost board member of the Olof Palme Memorial Fund, but he has also passed as a cabinet minister and also Secretary General of the Olof Palme International Center. As you know, he has also a background in media, and in my notes here it says that he was the talk show host of a program called Striptease. Please welcome Jens Urbach.
Thank you, Joachim. And Joachim, how do you inform yourself? You are a boomer.
Yes.
We both are.
For someone born in the 1950s, it's news media on paper, state television, but there's also something called internet. And if we want to inform you about Bellingcat, it's actually good to use all these kinds of media. There's a fantastic...
And can you choose between truth and false?
Well, my family members say that I'm a typical besserwisser, an expert in many fields. But to you, I can admit that sometimes I feel lost, and then it's I'm sort of grappling for reliable media. So this is why it's good that someone is watching the media.
And Bellingcat is a good choice, not least for you then, Joachim.
Yes.
So I have the honor to lead this stage talk on journalism and truth. And journalism as a profession, I think it's a wonderful profession for someone who wants to ask the question, why, what, how, and you can collect all that information, process it, evaluate it, distribute it, and inform about the news. And taking up the idea of striptease, maybe I should say that the first broadcast we had, I think in 1991, almost 1/4 of every Swede was watching. So it was 2.7 million in the current affairs program, a success. The next program, it was 450,000. I don't know if they were disappointed, if they expected something else from the title, but that is a fact. And then we landed on 1 million, because at that time there were only 3 channels around. So I like that very much. Well, we heard that truth and false are echoed around the world, and see if we can solve this in 30 minutes. Before going into this, I say I have a plan, and that is to talk a little bit about the problems, maybe see if there are any visions, and then concentrate on how do we get there. I often, when I used to moderate, say that I had a wish, and being a founder of freedom of speech, at the last part of our conversation, if there is anything that you think, well, this question has to be raised, raise your hand, and I will see if we can also bring in your question. But we will start off by talking a little bit more to our truth seekers, and welcome again Elliot Higgins, and now together with Charlotte Marr, who is a social media editor at Bellingcat. Welcome.
Hey, hey.
Hey, hey. Charlotte, what is a social media editor doing at Bellingcat?
Keeping the peace, I think. In terms of publishing, we look at different storytelling methods, so looking at how we can publish video investigations, how we can publish audio. We try to support all of our investigations with some other forms of media to engage different audiences. And I also control all of our social media accounts, which means monitoring our Twitter, which is a difficult job sometimes, but exciting.
And who is following you? Can you see? Are there boomers like me, or are there young persons, or who's taking your information?
Yeah, I think we have quite a wide range of audience in terms of age range and regions. We are trying to reach new audiences across the world, working more in Latin American countries with partners over there. But we traditionally have quite a range of ages. When Elliot first started, we had kind of the key open source researcher community following us. And now, as Bellingcat's become more recognized, our work's been cited in different legacy media. It's become a lot more commonplace to kind of see a wide range of people kind of following us on individual platforms.
Bellingcat.
Yes.
What does it mean?
So in early 2014, I had decided I wanted to launch a website where people could, first of all, share their articles about open source investigation, but also learn how to do it. Because at that point, there were very few people doing it, but there was an increasing interest in it. So I had to come up with a clever name, and I was thinking of stuff like the open source and just awful, awful ideas. So I had a friend who's a playwright who knew my work on the phone hacking scandal in the UK, and I thought I'll ask him because he had a lot of books in his library when I went to visit him, so I thought he'll know some clever things. So I called him up, and he told me the fable of Belling the cat, and that's where a group of mice are very frightened of a large, ferocious cat. So they come up with, they come together in a meeting, and one of them suggests, why don't we put a bell on the neck of the cat? And all the mice celebrate. But the old mouse comes up but says, but who's going to put the bell on the cat's neck? So I looked at bellingthecat.com, and that was $4,000, and bellingcat.com was $40, so I bought bellingcat.com.
Okay. Yeah. I just read that cats in Europe are taking millions of small birds, so we should put the bell on them. But that is another seminar. That's not it. But sometimes also journalism is a question of resources. How are you financed?
So that's developed over the years. Very early on, I mean, I launched this using a Kickstarter campaign, crowdfunding, which was extremely nerve-wracking because at that point I was paying for everything from my own personal finances. I didn't have a full-time job. I'd been blogging for a year off another Kickstarter. And then when you go to funders, they say, well, you don't have any money, so we aren't going to give you any funding, which is kind of, so crowdfunding, thank God, existed at that point. Now, I mean, we have a much larger turnover. Like I said, we have 40 staff members. We get about, I would say about 30% of our income comes from workshops that we offer. Training is a really big part of what we've done. We've trained thousands of journalists, activists, and researchers, and now if you see open source investigation being done by other organizations, it's often because we train them to do it. About 50% of that comes from various donor organizations, so kind of large, like family foundations, for example, they donate to us, and other organizations like that. And about 20% of that comes from crowdfunding on various platforms, so we have like a Patreon account and those kind of things. And I think it's very important to have a diverse range of income because, for one thing, the independence of Bellingcat is very important, so we would never want it to be just relying on one or two sources of funding. Mm-hmm. So we try and make it as diverse as possible.
And if I was very rich and a philanthropist, and I would go to you and say, you can have $100,000 here, and I want you to look into whether sexual violence have occurred on that side in Gaza.
I think in that case we'd say no, because we do not want to be directed with our research. When we seek funding, generally we're looking for two types of funding. Funding that is specifically for projects that we've decided we want to do ourselves, or core funding, which is just non-specific funding for our activities. We spend a lot of time discussing this as an organization, what kind of funding we accept. That is something that has changed and evolved over time as well. but it's very important for me as an organization. The way Bellingcat is run is not a kind of top-down organization where I'm kind of telling everyone what to do. We've spent about a year developing a strategy for our organization, and every single member of staff was involved with that, and not just paying lip service to that idea, but we had staff retreats with everyone involved, and it was a very long process, but it means that everyone has buy-in to what the organization is and how we operate.
We're collaborative in nature, internally and externally.
But would you say yes to the 100,000?
Oh, yeah. If you want to do it.
No. Okay, I would like to welcome also our Swedish guests, Karin Pettersson, Head of Culture at Aftonbladet.
Hello. Hi.
And
Hi.
Hi.
Fredrik
Hi.
Laurin, investigating journalist at Swedish Television. Welcome.
Thank you.
For how long have you been here, Karin? Because I knew you were late, but did you hear anything of what?
Oh yeah, no, I came early.
Okay, very
Okay.
good. Thank you.
Okay. Late but early. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to start with you, Karin. I was reading your book, Internet is Broken. The other day I was reading an article by you saying Internet is boring. But in the first book, I mean, you really explained.
Clearly
that
wasn't talking about Bellingcat.
No, we're going to talk about you. No, but I just wanted to see, in that book you very well described that the media platforms, maybe they would like to be seen as freedom givers, but you showed that they were also a little bit interested in making money. And what state are we in now, would you say? Is it broken, or is it getting boring, or is it where in the development?
Well, it's a big question, and you could address it from many different directions. But I've been thinking about the questions of media, democracy, and the change in the public sphere driven by technology these last 10 years. I mean, and this book came out a few years ago now. But I would say, I mean, to your discussion that you had before, and as someone who's been working in journalism for many years now, journalism is not, I think we just need to live with the fact that journalism is one of many sources in the public sphere right now. And it comes with a lot of challenges, but it also comes with some opportunities. I don't particularly like, I mean, I don't want to get stuck in nostalgia. I don't want to say, we had this discussion just now, was it better before? It was different. I mean, it was a different time when a few entities controlled the public sphere, for good and for bad. Maybe more for good, but here we are, and everything has changed. So journalism today lives in some kind of twisted relationship with social media, as I said, one of many players, and we live in a public sphere that is flat in the sense that for most users, journalism is not valued differently than other sources. I think for older generations, yes, still, but for younger generations, it's one of many outlets, Bellingcat, Aftonbladet, and then some influencer you like, or a voice that you trust. So what do you do with that? How do you do journalism in an environment like that? And also how do you think about democracy and trust? I mean, these are really, really hard questions. I think there is an opportunity for journalism in the sense that I think the internet today, it's much more relations-based, as you were talking about before, but then you need to really be careful with your brand or with the trust or with who you are, and you need to have a strong relationship with your readers, viewers. And I don't know, also in this time of AI, disinformation, what have you, it's also an opportunity for known brands, for journalism, for legacy media, in the sense that it comes with a set of values, comes with a set of tools that also, I mean, it has value in itself, that knowledge. So I don't know, but I think we just need to, it's a very, very different world today, obviously, than 20 years ago, and it's driven by technological change. My greatest concern is that so much of this space where we spend our days these are driven by commercial oligopolistic, monopolistic sometimes entities they only have commercial interests at heart, and so the algorithms are not favoring truth or deep thinking. It's favoring rage, as we all know, and that's the gravest danger.
Fredrik, you have been an investigating journalist for a long time. We worked together in the 90s. And being in this international field, would you say that the state in Sweden is just like the other countries, or do we have any benefits from having a stronger public service where you live, or is it very much the same around the globe?
I would say that we are so globalized today that the issues we are talking about here are fairly common. Of course, there are differences, but Sweden is no exception. In many ways, we are strong because we have a good education system, etc., high literacy and things like that, and high internet reach. But no, I think it's a global issue.
That's Swedish television or Uppdrag granskning, the current affairs program, would they like to be our answer to Bellingcat, and can they live up to that? Honestly?
Are you asking me?
Yes, I'm asking you. And I have a lie detector on your foot.
And you're not asking a representative of the state.
No, I'm asking Fredrik.
Thank you very much. I think we have a lot to live up to. Definitely. And I mean, I'm not particularly meaning Swedish television. I mean journalism as a profession. I am under strict orders from my significant other at this morning's breakfast, not to say that it was better before. So I'm not going to say that. And I don't think so, because I think that things like Bellingcat and the globalized information sphere, at least if we talk about NGOs like the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists that I'm part of, or OCCRP, which I'm also working with often, and others like that, I think they have brought enormous wealth to the information sphere. And Bellingcat definitely has in the field of OSINT, open source intelligence. It's not like you've invented the wheel, but you have started using the wheel. Mm-hmm. And we are very much stuck in an industry that's more or less 500 years old, and our organizations are very it's like amoeba moving around like this, and have lost their sense of orientation, I think, in some senses. We can see it in the capitalist side, where they are losing money. We can see it in the state televisions, where they are losing support from the politicians and from the audience and the viewers. Mm. So I think we definitely have a lot to learn from people like you, and that's why it's so important that people like you show up and do your good work.
Mm. I mean, we can see, or we thought of a lot of, I think, for me, the good sides on the Arab Springs, and thinking now authoritarian states, they can't exist because the truth will come on. But rather, the opposite is now underblowing Donald Trump as a president. And what are the tools? One way would say asking for regulation, and you brought up the education or media literacy. What do you say, Karin? Can we handle it in a better way?
Well, I mean, I read your interesting piece in the Financial Times, long piece about the state of affairs and possible ways forward, and you're very skeptical towards regulation. And my personal view is, I think I think the internet should be regulated as much of society as the rest of society. Same laws should apply on the internet on a national basis as on defamation and what have you, should be the same laws on the internet as in the rest of society. I mean, and this is a contentious point maybe, but I'm not as skeptical as you when it comes to regulation maybe. I think this whole discussion around media literacy, I really liked your approach in this article, because you are much more discussing how to enable, how to give tools to young people to actually do the work themselves, how to investigate, how to explore, how to go where they want to go. Because I don't think, just to think that young people can be taught to, like, I don't know, look for the right sources only, or that we're not at the point anymore where there are big arbiters of truth that we can just tell young people to go read or look at. It's too passive approach, and we're past that point. So I don't personally believe in these big media literacy programs, but I do believe very much in your approach, where you talk about enabling, teaching people, citizens, I mean, to be much more active, because I think that's also a big problem in today's social media world. It's so passive most of the time. It's just being a consumer, looking at your feed, digesting the propaganda or the rage that you're being fed. And it's such a passive relationship to information. So it should be much more, it's an inspiring and I think visionary idea that you're working with to really give young people or new generations the tools to engage. And it's not about only then information, it's also being a citizen. It's about like living democracy in a different way.
And just to,
So thanks for such a great piece. And
Fredrik?
Yeah.
No, I totally agree with Karin and with your piece, because I think that on another aspect, it also keeps us as journalists, traditional journalists in traditional media, on our toes. Because you were the ones who told the truth about who shot down MH17. It wasn't us. It was a guy called Erik Andersson, an engineer, who bought an underwater drone and went down to the Nord Stream, where they blew up the Nord Stream, and contributed enormously to the truth, which still hasn't been published widely in Sweden, which is super interesting. And the fact that this is out, that your stuff on the MH17 is out, I mean, the police even thanked you afterwards. And I hope that we will thank Erik Andersson for investing a few $100,000 in finding the truth about Nord Stream, because that's Europe's biggest attack on infrastructure since the war. And our police is silent, our politicians are silent, because it doesn't suit their interests, and media is silent. And there we need people like you and Erik Andersson and others to keep us on our toes. We can't stay silent because the power brokers, because we think the power brokers want us to be silent, because then you'll come around.
Shall we be consequence neutral, as the Swedish expression from Erik Fichtelius? Do you sometimes think about the consequences of what you reveal, that this could hurt someone, or?
I think we do all the time, yeah.
Yeah, in our editorial process, we take a large amount of time making sure that everything we report has had every kind of mitigation process as possible to protect the individuals that we're accusing, or to protect individuals that may have been affected by the issue. I mean, we have 2 editors check every single piece of text. We have a legal check, and then we also have a technical check of every piece we put out. And I think, having worked as an investigative journalist at the BBC and at the Bureau of Investigative Journalism myself, and having been trained as a journalist, I think it's interesting how Bellingcat works and how replicable open source reporting is. I mean, the way that we write out our methodology, basically. It's almost like academic writing. Anybody who reads our piece knows exactly how we did our reporting. And I think that transparency is very key to trust and believability. And I think a lot of news organizations around the globe haven't quite grasped that concept. And I think that's also contributed to a distrust in news around the world.
For me, when I was started blogging, I understood I didn't know everything about what I was writing about. There were certain things that I could establish from this visual evidence. With the first 2 years of blogging I did, it really focused on the conflict in Syria and analysing the weapons that were appearing in videos. And that was partly because I didn't speak Arabic, so I didn't know what people were saying. But I became really, really good at arms identification. And when chemical attacks started happening, because I was the only person who was really paying attention to that kind of content, I almost had a kind of unique source of information. But throughout that, I was clear about my sources, my processes, what I didn't know, and I was really asking everyone else, do you know more that could add to our understanding of this? And that kind of networked approach of saying this isn't just about what we're writing, but what everyone can contribute in their own way to this, is really one of the kind of fundamental foundations of Bellingcat, and it's something that we've grown through collaborating with a whole range of organizations, from traditional news outlets to more specialized outlets.
I think that's also something that our audience sometimes doesn't quite understand. Sometimes they see a report by Bellingcat and say, oh, Bellingcat reported on this. This means this is the end of the story. This is the fact. That's it. And a lot of the time we try to put across in our reporting that this is just the start of the investigation. We've done as far as we can with open source methods, and we're handing this information to other news organizations, to our audience, to dig even deeper, go further, find out more. And I think that kind of acknowledgement is also really important.
When established media, if I call you that, are competing with social media, on social media there is a lot of sensationalism, or cats, or dancing, or whatever. Do you need to be funnier? Or, I mean, at the Uppdrag Granskning, there are some drama on looking and following, and do we have to work with the format more to entice or to compete with sensationalism that is often beating facts? And
now you have the wrong guy on the stage. Not for me to answer.
I think there is a dance between traditional media and social media, where the logic of social media is, because it's so emotion-driven, it's very rage-driven, and that's for algorithmic reasons and for commercial reasons, that's the kind of content that works best on many social media platforms. I think that tends to, unfortunately, influence also many traditional media outlets, how they report, because I mean, it's also because of what we talked about earlier, that the big news organizations, I mean, I work at a really big newspaper, it's the biggest in Scandinavia, but still, it doesn't have the grasp of the public sphere that it used to, together with the other big newspapers. So we're part of an ecosystem where social media are very, very strong players. So it's just a fact that we are also becoming influenced by that logic. And I think it's really, really, really important to understand and be aware of as a news organization. But it's hard as a human being, because we also live in this reality and we're affected by it. So it's not so easy, and the lines are blurry between these different streams of information. But I was thinking, I mean, just going back to the last election campaign, for example, in Sweden, where we had a very, strong political forces driving the conversation around crime, integration, and that really dominated the media discourse as well, even though looking at the polls, we know that the most important issue for voters was healthcare. But since the parties were so efficient in setting the agenda in social media, the mass media or legacy media went with that agenda. And I think it's much easier today than before. It was always a game between politicians and media, for sure. But it's easier today to play traditional media through social media. You use social media to set the agenda, to get stuff trending, and then legacy media feel that they need to run with that. So it's a very dangerous and quite subtle, strange ecosystem we're living in. And if you're not aware of it, I don't know, you don't see actually what's happening. So,
and I think just quickly recap on your question, in terms of kind of copying the models of influencers. I mean, there's some very bizarre sources of news on the internet. I mean,
Yeah.
one of the most viral breaking news TikTok channels is a fish from the cartoon SpongeBob. A lot of Gen Z are getting their breaking news, learning about COVID, learning about wars in Ukraine through a fish on TikTok. That doesn't mean that SVT or the BBC have to dress someone up in a fish costume and get them to film vertical video and pretend they're part of a SpongeBob cartoon. It's not going to work. It might get you virality, but it's not going to get you respect. And I think...
How are you packaging your information?
Well, exactly. I think what a lot of... I wish. Maybe that's an idea. I think a lot of what legacy media and just media in general and organizations that want to reach young people need to understand that in terms of, you were talking about the fact that consumption online is very passive. Young people want to be active. They want to be that active audience. They want to be involved. They want to understand how this issue affects them. And if you're framing your narrative in terms of putting it online, you're on the channels that they exist in. If you are framing the news, at the top, that's your headline. How does this affect them? How does this affect them personally? That's going to be the thing that draws them in, not the ridiculous fish costume or TikTok dances.
I have a very irritating clock there ticking, saying it's only a minute left. But just to... Stefan Löfven was also mentioning AI. My mother, born the same year as Olof Palme, when she reads something, it's true because it's black and white. And I have to tell her, especially when they write bad things about me before, that it doesn't need to be true. But then I am in the sense, well, if you look at pictures, for instance, or videos, then you know the truth. Now there is an AI coming up. Is there now a new literacy thing that we have to go through?
Absolutely, and I think the risk there is not so much that it will make people believe things that aren't true, but it'll make them choose not to believe things that are true. It gives them a permission structure to say, well, that site probably uses AI-generated imagery, so I can ignore that. And we've seen that happen with Israel and Gaza. We've seen Israel being falsely accused of using AI-generated evidence and that being going viral, and then people using that as a reference point to say, well, we can't trust any images Israel produces. So for me, that is the real risk, more so than kind of convincing people of stuff that's not true.
I don't know if we should end this conversation in a positive or negative tone.
Positive.
Positive, okay.
Let's go positive.
What can we then, how can we use this in a positive way? This social media, reaching out all over, now we have AI. How can we be stronger? Hands up.
I think just quickly in terms of ways forward, it's working collectively as different industries, media, politics, educational sectors, working together to create tools and resources that help educate people in terms of the risks involved and how to kind of investigate themselves, but also tools that help tackle some of the AI creation. So, for example, deepfake audio, there's not a lot of tools out there at the moment that help actually detect that. And that's something that I think the media could champion as individuals.
I'd add to that, about 11 years ago, I was, in my early blogging days, I was invited to a kind of retreat by an organization called Tactical Tech, and there was about 100 journalists and activists there, and I met Paul Radu there, who's the founder of the OCCW. He's a really great investigative journalist, and he told me about how, when crime is cross-border, you have to have a cross-border approach to that. And I've taken that both in kind of the work we do investigation, but also how we work with different types of organization. You can't just think about what your type of organization is doing or what our other journalists or activists do. You have to connect to everyone because that is the society we live in now. And we have to connect to people who are experts and amateurs and who are just interested and want to get involved. And if we don't do that, I think we'll just see what's happening now, the worst aspects of it grow and really corrupt our democracy.
Right. I think Olof Palme would have liked that. I mean, we connect him often to peace, human rights, and democracy, but education was one of his favorite things that he talked about, so maybe education is a good answer to this. Thank you very much. Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Elliot. Thank you, Karin, and thank you, Fredrik.
And congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tack.
You are a success story in many ways.
That's it. Thank you very much. And now, och nu är jag sugen på att sätta mig och återigen lyssna på Jenny Abrahamsson.
None but the righteous will be saved. Who runs a truly righteous game? Oh, none but the righteous will be saved. Who runs a truly righteous game? Take me down to the water. To the water. Take me down to the water, to the water. Will it make me shine again? Washing me down and press restart. Oh, brother, what will come from this? Oh, can I have an up your heart? Take me down to the water, to the water. Take me down to the water, to the water. Make me new, can you make me new? I have lived and I have loved. Make me new, can you make me new? With your powers from above. Make me new, can you make me new? I have lived and I love. Make me new, can you make me new? With your powers from above. Thank you so much. Thank you. I wanted to say thank you also to the foundation for letting me grace this fine occasion musically. Thank you. Yes, they're worth an applause. I also wanted to say that the first song that I played this afternoon was made by ABBA, or Björn och Benny. Important information. I also wanted to say, I'll present my co-musician here, Robin Lindvall. Applause. And finally, congrats on the prize, Bellingcat, Elliot. Very well deserved. We're gonna finish off with a song that in a way is slightly depressing, but also about hope. I think we need hope today. It's a song by Tom York called Atoms for Peace. No more going to the dark side with your flying saucer eyes. No more going down a wormhole that I have to pull you out. The wriggling, squiggling worm inside devours from the inside out. No more talk about the old days. It's time for something great. I wanna get you out and make it work. So many lies, so many lies, so many lies. Will feel alarm come up for them and take me on.
So we have reached the closing of this ceremony. I want to thank you all for attending. I hope that we have together raised the issue of information and democracy higher on the agenda. So thank you for being here. I want to thank again Jenny Abrahamsson, but also Robin Lindman for the fantastic music and song. I think we'll give them another round of applause. Culture is such an important part of our activities. I also again want to thank Bellingcat for all the jobs that you attended, Elliot and Charlotte, for having stayed a few days also in Stockholm and given interviews and being active in other ways as well. I want to thank the panelists beside Elliot and Charlotte, Karin Pettersson, Fredrik Laurin. I want to thank Jens Obak for conducting this panel, but also Joachim Palme for conducting the whole ceremony. With this, my friend, we will end the ceremony. You are invited we can have something to chew on and perhaps something to drink as well, and keep discussing the important issue of information and democracy in the spirit of Olof Palme. Thank you once again.